from a libertarian standpoint, it's very difficult to look at any of these folks and say, oh, they're great or oh, they're horrible, because they're all a mixed bag, because Democrats nor Republicans really line up with libertarianism a lot of times.
That Mike, that's just because libertarians, in the way that we think, are just idolaters.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, duh.
Well, so Carrie, I just have one last question. So the Roe v. Wade was decided by a Republican appointed majority. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was in the 70s.
Yeah.
But I would just venture to sort of snarkily suggest that this was before they found Jesus in the 80s, right? The Republican Party, they found Jesus or Reagan, or according to them, apparently it's the same. But they found, the right way, right? So they became the moral majority, and now, if you don't vote Republican as a Christian, you're Doug. Just, I have harsh words. Jesus had harsh words for Pharisees. Why can't I have harsh words for people?
I'm not discounting.
All right. Just making
I'm just saying, now you're calling yourself Jesus. I don't think that's a wise thing to do.
No, I'm just saying I'm imitating him.
Oh, okay.
No, I really, I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go at it here. So, my fight is not with you, Matthew. Our fight is with someone who doesn't understand our movement and continues to perpetuate.
Oh, he makes me. Here's the thing, though. He makes me sad because there are things about him that I do like and that I can take and appreciate, but then just goes and makes complete categorical and absolute errors. And
and he keeps bringing it
like,
up.
Okay, what the hell are you doing, buddy?
Yeah. So we need look. Who are we talking about? Al Mohler. Is who we're talking about, the president of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Hey, you guys want to know how to fix abortion real quick first?
Oh yeah.
Yes, please.
Here's the 10th.
We're going to fix the courts.
Here's the 10th Amendment Center strategy on dealing with unconstitutional and overreaching Supreme Court decisions. Ignore them.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right.
I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
Yeah. Ignore them.
We need to have some states with the wherewithal to pass whatever legislation that they deem appropriate, and then ask the court, the Supreme Court can. I mean, Abraham Lincoln actually made this comment, and Abraham Lincoln's not one of my favorite figures. Sorry, Republicans, but he made the statement. The court's made its opinion. Now let them enforce it. They have no ability to enforce
I love the most powerful legal argument that you have, Mike. Is
ignore it.
Yeah. It's the Rosa Parks strategy. Just saying.
That's interesting that
I
you
do
say
not
this, Mike.
consent.
Right. It's interesting that you bring that up because, like, the first partial birth abortion ban was at the state level, and it was struck down by Carhart 1. We lost.
I'm here. I'm right. We're good.
Okay.
Doug's battery's exhausted.
Yeah.
So
I'm getting
past its.
We're way over time on this episode, by the way.
Yeah.
So when you have a court that strikes down a state law, I mean, I'm assuming you're saying that that's outside their jurisdiction, but that state just, goes and says, oh, well, the Supreme Court said no.
That's basically what happens, and it doesn't have to.
That's why I think we just have an innate authority bias that we all just want to look at somebody who is above us and say, well, I got to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, so Mike, your answer is that we need to empower state governments more.
Mike's answer is
here's the actual thing, and this
was to jab you a little bit.
I'm about to offend about probably 2/3 of your audience.
That's all good.
For goodness sake, have the guts of the weed people.
The who?
The weed people.
The marijuana people. I tell the gun rights people this all the time. You guys have no guts compared to the marijuana people. The marijuana people have effectively nullified federal marijuana prohibition. There's 33 states that have legalized marijuana in some way, and yet the federal government still swears up and down that it's illegal across the country.
That is true.
It is true.
Yeah.
It's a terribly persuasive argument.
So you say we'd be better off if we ignored it.
Oh.
All right, we need to wrap this up by taking on Al Mohler, because that was like a whole segment, and then we had to.
It was going to be a whole segment.
We got to go back to legal meh. So legal meh and smoking
legal meh. Yeah, that should be our catchphrase. Legal meh.
That sounds a lot like you're saying legal meth.
True, but
it's the first thing I thought of Mike when he said that.
But we all get together at 4:21. So anyway,
gosh.
Go ahead, Doug. I'm sorry.
I don't even know where to go.
Al Mohler.
Yes,
Al Mohler.
We were talking about Al Mohler, and we're not trying to pick fights here.
Okay.
We're not?
There's a lot of misunderstandings out there about libertarianism. And from some people who are Christians who seem to have the time and ability to understand what we believe. I mean, it's not like there's a whole website out there dedicated to propagating what exactly libertarian Christians believe.
If only
there were a website that did that, then Al Mohler could read it and say, "Oh, this is what they believe." Well, I disagree, but I shouldn't use this in this argument against them. So the thing of the day isn't like, oh, we're just randomly picking on Al Mohler. It has to do with the abortion content. So Carrie, this is one of those things where it's like we've talked about this already, sort of like as a stream throughout this entire episode or string of videos here, is that there's this big shiny red button that the Republicans tend to use. And it's like it's the single issue vote thing, right? And so it's like the single most important election of our lifetime because of this one thing.
It's coming at you in November.
And guess what? What happens if that's Matt? I just noticed. I'm looking at the camera. And like, what happens? And it's not the camera that's on. I'm not even looking at the right camera right now. What happens if that's gone?
Yeah.
They take that away. Well,
what do people rally around? Yeah.
What are people going to rally around? The GOP will collapse. It won't get any votes.
That's partially what got George Bush involved, or at least elected in 2000. It was a lot of those single issue voters that was utilized by what's his name that got people out of the woodwork to say,
Karl Rove.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
If you elect Al Jolson, not Al Jolson. What's his name?
Al Gore.
Al Gore.
Why am I so bad on names? It's like 10:30 at night. Anyway, if you
Karl
like
Rove's a tough name to remember 20 years ago.
All these single issues aren't going to go your way, so you need to get a Republican in there so that we can get Republican judges and other things so that we can live a better, happier, healthier life. And look at what we've got. So.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something that really, when I was researching these court cases and even going back through a lot of Al Mohler stuff, I mean, I gotta say, Al Mohler, and he just recently did a talk at a Ligonier conference just last year where he's talking about these court cases. He's talking about Roe. He's talking about Doe. He's talking about Griswold. He knows. He said he was in the chambers for Casey. So he knows. He knows all of this rationale. Mm-hmm. And yet he's seen
something like your table, just not your table.
Sure. He knows what I know. He knows what I've figured out. And he's sitting here saying, I mean, not only that, like in 2016, he said, I'm not voting for Trump, but now he's saying that Christians, as a manner of stewardship, of the Christian worldview and traditional culture and things like that, we have to vote for Trump. We have to vote for a Republican. We have to get that seat filled by a conservative. And, I went back and I listened to Mohler's debate with Norman Horn from the Julie Roy's show, excuse me.
Yep.
And he said something really interesting, and I wrote it down and I want to quote it because I feel like we need to hold him to this.
Whoever's editing this, put some long haul reverb on this next phrase.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Got it.
Go ahead.
Okay. He says, I wouldn't want anything to do with holding to a position that is unclear and not absolutely certain that an unborn human being is indeed to be protected, and aggression against an unborn human being is of a matter of grievous moral consequence. He goes on, That to me is exactly where we understand the whole idea of Christian libertarianism breaks down. It's associating itself with a political movement that at the very least is uncertain as to whether an unborn human being is actually a human being that deserves protection and also non-aggression.
So in the 60s, he wouldn't have voted Republican then.
What?
I don't understand this.
But the record...
The record.
The record, right. Al, the record. You're hanging your hat on something that doesn't exist. You want it to exist. It doesn't. And it's unfortunate. I'm sorry to say that the only way that you're going to get rid of this grievous sin in our country is if you start to understand that it is people and it is the individuals who are going to get rid of this, not a government or a court system. Okay, I'm done.
All right. So
I have to say, I find
go ahead, Mike.
I find this whole appeal to the sanctity of life a little thin, considering the Republicans' record of blowing up children in foreign countries.
Yeah.
I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you. Yeah,
no, I think we're on the same page there for sure.
Yeah, we're all on the same page there.
I figured we were.
And
here's the thing. Let's at least be generous and say they don't want that directly, but by their indirect votes and what they call for, that's what ends up happening.
Right.
A lot of conservative Republican friends and my father and family and other people would say that absolutely. But if you're going to on policy when it comes to governmental processes, if you're going to say look at the unintended consequences of bad government policy, you have to say, well, look at the unintended consequences of bad policy on war. Look at what we're doing here. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Well, and here's the other thing, because
and of course I don't want ISIS around. I don't want that. I just don't want. Yeah. Anyway.
All right, Karen, you get the last word.
Qualifications.
Okay. I get pegged on by conservatives who don't like that I'm not morally outraged by abortion. Like, Al Mohler is morally outraged on abortion, and rightly so insofar as it's morally outrageous. But that's where these guys stop. They stop with the moral outrage. They just simply say, we want you to be morally outraged by this, and we want you to vote Republican because for some reason they've persuaded Republicans that that's the way to save the unborn. And, moral outrage, number one, is not a sufficient substitute for justice. And number two, it's the lowest form of thinking. And the only way we are going to solve this abortion problem is to critically think about it and critically think about what the causes are and how to actually resolve it. Our moral outrage is going to do nothing.
Amen.